Friendship is meant to be a place of safety, reciprocity, and support. But sometimes the very people we trust can slowly erode our sense of well-being. This often happens when a friend shows patterns of narcissism. Now, narcissism isn't just someone being confident or self-absorbed from time to time. It's a consistent pattern of behavior that leaves you feeling diminished, unseen, and used. When we talk about the idea of narcissism, it is important to begin with clarity. Many people throw around the word narcissist casually, using it to describe anyone who appears selfish or self-centered. But in reality, narcissism runs deeper than occasional moments of arrogance or self-interest. It is a personality style marked by a consistent pattern of entitlement, lack of empathy, and an unbalanced need for admiration. When these traits show up consistently in someone's character, they do not just affect how that person moves through the world, but also how the people close to them experience the relationship. In the context of friendship, this can be particularly confusing. We expect our friends to be the people we lean on, trust, and celebrate life with. But when narcissism is part of the dynamic, the very foundation of friendship, mutual respect and reciprocity, becomes compromised. Understanding narcissism in friendships is especially important because it can often fly under the radar. With romantic relationships, the intensity and intimacy often make the red flags more visible. But with friends, the expectations can feel lighter, which means people are more likely to dismiss the signs or excuse the behavior. For example, if a friend is constantly dominating conversations, you may write it off as, "That's just how they are." If they dismiss your feelings, you might say, maybe they're just busy or distracted. But when these patterns accumulate, they begin to take a toll. They leave you feeling minimized, unimportant, or even invisible in the relationship. Another aspect to consider is that narcissism operates on a spectrum. Not every friend who occasionally fails to listen or puts themselves first is necessarily narcissistic. The key difference lies in consistency. With narcissistic friends, the self-focus is chronic and relentless. They repeatedly prioritize their needs and desires over yours, often without acknowledgement or remorse. Over time, this reveals itself not as a momentary lapse, but as a defining feature of the friendship. This is why awareness is so essential. It allows you to differentiate between someone who is imperfect but caring versus someone who is locked in patterns that harm you consistently. Recognizing narcissistic traits in a friend also helps you understand the psychological dynamics at play. Narcissistic people often view relationships transactionally. That means they engage with others primarily for what they can gain, whether that's attention, validation, access to social circles, or even material benefits. In a healthy friendship, you expect a balance of give and take. Sometimes you show up for them, sometimes they show up for you. But in a narcissistic dynamic, the balance is skewed. You may find yourself giving more, listening more, supporting more without receiving that same care in return. This imbalance can leave you emotionally exhausted while your friend remains energized and satisfied. It is also important to reflect on the emotional impact this has on you. Friendships should generally contribute to your sense of well-being, but when narcissism is present, they often do the opposite. You may feel anxious before interacting with this friend, unsure of what mood they will be in or how they will treat you. You may find yourself censoring your own feelings out of fear that they will dismiss or ridicule you. Over time, this dynamic chips away at self-esteem. It teaches you to doubt yourself, to question your value, and to settle for relationships where you are not fully seen or respected. This is not only damaging in the present, but it can also shape how you approach future relationships. Another layer to keep in mind is that narcissism often hides behind charm. Many narcissistic friends can be engaging, funny, charismatic, or even generous at times. These moments can create confusion because you begin to wonder if maybe you are imagining the negative aspects. But this intermittent reinforcement, the good moments sprinkled in with the bad, is what keeps many people stuck in unhealthy friendships. You remember the times your friend made you laugh or gave you a compliment, and you hold on to those even as the negative patterns continue to dominate. Understanding this push and pull is key to recognizing that narcissism is not defined by isolated moments, but by the ongoing pattern of how they treat you. Ultimately, Understanding what narcissism really means in the context of friendship equips you with awareness. It gives you language for the experiences that leave you confused or hurt. It helps you see that when a friend continually disregards your needs, minimizes your feelings, or uses you as a means to an end, this is not just bad behavior or rough patch. It is a reflection of a deeper pattern that is unlikely to change without significant self-awareness and effort on their part. This knowledge does not mean you must immediately cut ties or label every difficult person as narcissistic, but it does mean you can step back, evaluate the relationship more clearly, and make choices that protect your own well-being. By defining and contextualizing narcissism in this way, you can better spot the early signs in friendships. And more importantly, you can stop blaming yourself for dynamics that were never balanced to begin with. Recognizing the pattern is the first step toward reclaiming your energy, your boundaries, and your sense of self in the relationships that matter most. When we start exploring the signs that might suggest a friend has narcissistic tendencies, it is essential to look at patterns rather than isolated behaviors. Everyone can be self-focused at times, dismiss a friend without meaning to, or even make a careless comment. What makes narcissistic traits stand out is their persistence and their impact on you over time. A friend who consistently leaves you feeling unimportant, drained, or invalidated is likely showing patterns worth paying attention to. When we highlight 5 common signs of narcissism in friendships, it gives us a clearer lens to evaluate what may be happening beneath the surface. The first sign is when the friendship feels overwhelmingly one-sided. In a balanced friendship, conversations and support flow both ways. Sometimes you show up for your friend, and sometimes they show up for you. But with a narcissistic friend, the scale tips heavily in their favor. They expect you to listen to their stories, their struggles, and their triumphs. Yet when it is your turn to share, they quickly redirect the spotlight back to themselves. You might notice that your joys are overshadowed or your hardships are brushed aside. Over time, this leaves you feeling invisible. Friendships should not feel like constant performances where one person plays the lead role and the other remains in the background. The second sign is a consistent struggle with empathy. Empathy is the ability to step into another person's shoes and connect with their emotional experience. In healthy friendships, even when your friend cannot fully understand what you are going through, they at least try to acknowledge your feelings. A narcissistic friend, however, often cannot or will not make that effort. When you share something painful, they might trivialize it, compare it to their own struggles, or act inconvenienced by your emotions. Instead of feeling comforted, you walk away feeling dismissed. Over time, this lack of empathy can create a painful sense of isolation, as though your inner world does not matter. The third sign is that you may begin to feel more like a source of supply than a friend. In the context of narcissism, supply refers to the attention, admiration, and energy they extract from others. With a narcissistic friend, your role often shifts from equal partner to provider of validation. You may be expected to constantly cheer them on, reassure them when they feel slighted, or support their endless ambitions. Yet, when you look for the same kind of care in return, they are absent or uninterested. This imbalance is exhausting because you are constantly pouring energy into the relationship without being replenished. Friendships should be a two-way street, not a one-sided transaction that leaves you depleted. The fourth sign is subtle but damaging: frequent criticism or devaluation. Narcissistic friends often use humor, sarcasm, or backhanded compliments to put you down. At first, you may dismiss these remarks as jokes, but over time, they chip away at your confidence. You may notice that your achievements are met with competition rather than celebration, or that your efforts are belittled rather than appreciated. This steady stream of criticism keeps you second, guessing yourself, and diminishes the joy of sharing your successes. Instead of feeling lifted by your friend, you feel undermined, which is the opposite of what friendship should provide. The fifth sign is repeated disregard for your boundaries. Boundaries are an essential part of any healthy relationship. They define where you end and another person begins, and they protect your emotional and mental well-being. A narcissistic friend often views boundaries as obstacles to their control or access. If you ask for space, they might guilt trip you. If you say no to a request, they might become angry or dismissive. Even when you communicate your limits clearly, they continue to ignore them. This creates a dynamic where your needs are consistently trampled, reinforcing the sense that the friendship revolves solely around their comfort, not yours. When we look at these 5 signs together, what becomes clear is not just the behavior of the narcissistic friend, but the impact on you. The one-sided nature leaves you drained. The lack of empathy makes you feel unseen. Being treated as a source of supply reduces your humanity to a function. The constant criticism chips away at your confidence. And the disregard for boundaries erodes your sense of safety. These patterns are not just frustrating, they are damaging to your emotional health. By identifying these behaviors, you gain clarity. You realize that the exhaustion and confusion you feel in the friendship are not simply because you are overly sensitive or not trying hard enough. Instead, they are the natural outcomes of a relationship dominated by narcissistic patterns. Understanding these signs does not mean you must rush to label or confront your friend. It simply means you are giving yourself the gift of awareness, the ability to recognize when a friendship no longer nurtures you, and the permission to protect yourself when needed. The impact of being in a friendship with narcissistic traits is often underestimated. People tend to assume that harmful dynamics only exist in romantic or family relationships, but friendships can be just as powerful in shaping our emotional landscape. When a friend consistently operates in a narcissistic pattern, the effect is not just about what they do, but about how you feel in their presence. Over time, these experiences can erode your confidence, distort your perception of relationships, and create emotional exhaustion that is difficult to name. Understanding the impact is essential because it allows you to separate the behaviors from your self-worth and to see clearly how the dynamic is influencing your well-being. One of the most noticeable impacts is emotional depletion. Healthy friendships usually provide a sense of balance. You can laugh, confide, share struggles, and walk away feeling lighter or supported. With a narcissistic friend, however, the opposite often occurs. After spending time together, you may feel drained, as though you have given more than you received. This happens because narcissistic friends often take center stage, expecting your energy and attention to be directed toward them without offering much in return. That constant imbalance leaves you carrying an emotional load, even when you didn't realize you were taking it on. Another significant impact is self-doubt. Over time, the patterns of dismissal, criticism, or minimization can lead you to question your own feelings. If you share something painful and they brush it off, you might start wondering if you are overreacting. If they use sarcasm or belittling comments, you may begin doubting your worth. This self-questioning becomes internalized, and you might catch yourself editing your words, silencing your needs, or holding back your emotions to avoid their judgment. Slowly, the friendship conditions you to prioritize their comfort over your authenticity, and that undermines your sense of self. There is also the impact of walking on eggshells. Because narcissistic friends can be reactive when boundaries are set or when they feel criticized, you may find yourself tiptoeing around them. You might avoid saying no, even when you want to, because you fear the backlash. You might hesitate to share your good news, worried they will respond with envy or indifference. This constant calculation creates a low-level anxiety in the friendship. Instead of feeling relaxed and free to be yourself, you feel tense and careful, which prevents genuine connection. In addition, being in a narcissistic friendship often shifts the way you view relationships in general. If you become accustomed to one-sided dynamics, you may start to believe that it is normal to be overlooked or undervalued. This can affect how you approach other friendships, work relationships, and even future romantic connections. You may lower your expectations, accept less than you deserve, or overlook red flags in others because you've been conditioned to see them as part of the package. The longer you stay in such a dynamic, the harder it becomes to recognize what healthy, mutual friendship actually feels like. The impact is not only emotional but also practical. When your time and energy are being drained by one-sided interactions, it leaves less room for people who genuinely care about you. You may notice that you are canceling plans with other friends to accommodate this one person's needs. You may spend hours replaying conversations in your mind, trying to understand why you feel unsettled. All of this mental and emotional bandwidth could be invested in healthier connections, but instead it is consumed by managing the imbalance in one unhealthy friendship. Another often overlooked consequence is the erosion of joy. Friendships are supposed to bring lightness and connection into your life. They should be spaces where laughter, comfort, and mutual support thrive. With a narcissistic friend, those joyful moments are sporadic and often overshadowed by tension, criticism, or manipulation. You may still hold on to the occasional good memory, but the dominant experience is one of frustration or disappointment. This uneven mix can be confusing because it keeps you hoping for the moments of fun while enduring the ongoing harm. Perhaps the most subtle yet damaging impact is the way such friendships make you betray yourself. When you continuously downplay your feelings, ignore your instincts, or accept less than you deserve, you are teaching yourself to settle. You may even start believing that this is the best you can get from friendships. That quiet erosion of self-respect can be more harmful than any single incident because it shapes the way you see yourself in all relationships moving forward. Recognizing this impact is not about labeling your friend or diagnosing them. It is about understanding what happens to you in the presence of these patterns. If you consistently feel unseen, undervalued, or drained, then the friendship is not nourishing you in the way it should. Acknowledging this is the first step toward reclaiming your sense of self and making choices that prioritize your well-being. Friendships should leave you feeling supported and enriched, not diminished. Once you see the true impact, you gain the power to shift the dynamic or step away, and that is how you begin to restore balance in your emotional life. When we talk about the importance of recognizing narcissistic patterns in friendships, it is not to encourage judgment or to attach harsh labels to people. The goal is awareness and self-protection. Too often, people stay entangled in friendships that consistently harm them because they feel guilty for pulling back, or they tell themselves they are being unkind for noticing the patterns. But awareness is not cruelty, it is clarity. When you can see what is happening, you can make conscious choices about how to protect yourself rather than being pulled along by confusion or misplaced loyalty. The key takeaway is this: friendships are meant to be mutual, supportive, and affirming. When they stop serving that role and instead become spaces where you feel used, dismissed, or diminished, it is a sign that something is deeply unbalanced. Naming what you are experiencing as narcissistic behavior is not about diagnosing your friend. It is about acknowledging that their actions consistently leave you feeling unseen and undervalued. This shift in perspective allows you to stop internalizing the blame. Instead of asking, "What am I doing wrong?" you can begin asking, "Why am I staying in a dynamic that hurts me?" That change in question is powerful. Self-protection often begins with boundaries. Boundaries are not punishments or walls. They are simply guidelines for how you wish to be treated. If a friend constantly interrupts you or dismisses your struggles, a boundary might be limiting how much personal information you share. If they always expect your time but never reciprocate, a boundary might be choosing not to rearrange your schedule for them. Boundaries are about reclaiming your time, energy, and emotional space. With narcissistic friends, you may find that boundaries are frequently tested or ignored, but even then, setting them reinforces to yourself that your needs are valid. Another element of self-protection is granting yourself permission to step back without guilt. Many people stay tied to toxic friendships because they feel indebted to the history they share. Perhaps this friend was once supportive during a difficult time, or maybe you have years of memories together. While that history matters, it does not excuse ongoing harm. People can be important in your past while no longer being healthy for your present. Giving yourself the freedom to honor what once was, while also stepping back from what now hurts, is one of the most compassionate choices you can make for yourself. It is also important to understand that you do not owe anyone unlimited access to your time and energy. Friendships should feel like a choice, not an obligation. If you constantly feel like you are walking on eggshells, or if you leave interactions drained and self-critical, that is information. Your body and emotions are sending you signals that something is off. Listening to those signals and acting on them is not selfish. It is self-respect. Protecting your mental and emotional health ensures that you have space for the relationships that truly nourish you. The takeaway is not that every difficult person should be cut off, but rather that you should pay attention to patterns. If you recognize consistent narcissistic traits, lack of empathy, one-sidedness, criticism, boundary violations, then the friendship is unlikely to transform into a balanced, supportive dynamic without significant change on their part. And because most people entrenched in these patterns are resistant to self-reflection, that change may never come. The only part you can control is your response. Will you continue to accept the imbalance, or will you choose to step into your own worth and protect your peace? By becoming aware of these dynamics, you also begin to rewrite your expectations of friendship. You start to see that true friends celebrate your victories, respect your boundaries, and sit with you in your struggles without turning it back to themselves. You recognize that friendship is not about keeping score, but about mutual care. When you internalize this standard, it becomes much easier to notice when someone falls short and to adjust your investment in the relationship accordingly. The broader message is empowerment. Narcissistic friendships can make you feel powerless, like you are trapped in a cycle you cannot escape. But awareness restores your agency. You realize that you are not stuck. You have choices. You can limit contact, redefine the friendship, or in some cases, walk away completely. And in doing so, you are not being cruel or disloyal. You are being protective of your mental health and respectful of your own needs. At the end of the day, awareness is a form of self-care. It helps you see that the exhaustion, the self-doubt, and the discomfort you feel are not random. They are the natural consequences of being in an unbalanced dynamic. By naming it, you break the cycle of confusion. By setting boundaries and choosing yourself, you begin to reclaim your sense of peace. And by doing so, you make room for the friendships that truly reflect the mutual support, respect, and care that everyone deserves.